traditional karakia to bring people together. And over this week and next Monday, we will be hearing from people from all around the whānau on our proposed long-term plan consultation document and how we'll strike the rates and how we'll spend our budget over the next 3 years for the people of the whānau. So we better have a pretty decent karakia to get us. Okay? Wairea te ngākau hi kaka wairea te karawaniwani, wairea te hakaro kino te haka ngākau. Haua te rongo mau haka tongia te aroha haka tina hia kia maia kia tūkaha. E ka ke kia ike a mioa te whenua rurukutia te mana haka uhia te tikanga o te kōtahitanga. Haumi e, hui e, pai e. Welcome to everybody in the room and everyone who is online. Now for our verbal submissions this morning, submitters will be given 10 minutes to speak to their submission. And following that, elected members will be allowed 3 minutes for any questions. If you don't use all of your time, then we can use that time for questions as well. Just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded and will be published to our Whānau District Council YouTube page following this. So I know sometimes when you're submitting or you're incredibly passionate about something, you suddenly become fluent in French like my grandfather is. But if we could please keep that to a minimum today. Councillor McNally, that would be great. No, I'm joking. Without further ado, I would like to thank our Bay of Islands Whangaroa Community Board for their presence today and welcome Chair Belinda Board and Member Lane here to give their submission. No mai haere mai, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. The first one we would like to speak to is issue number 1, the stormwater rating system. Number 2, change to a targeted rate based on land use and introduce a public good rate was the board's choice. The Bay of Islands Whangaroa Community Board agrees that the current stormwater infrastructure is at capacity in some areas. The stormwater infrastructure is failing completely. If Council continues to rate as status quo, the Council will not be able to maintain the stormwater infrastructure in regard to inspections, maintenance and future upgrades. If significant improvement is to be made, investment is required and option 2 is preferred. While option 2 does mean that there will be an increase in rates, including the inclusion of the public good rate, it will lead to less flooding of private properties, which costs ratepayers to repair. Option 2 will also lead to less funding being expended on roads that have been damaged due to flooding, including major slips. Number 2, change to district-wide rates for those connected to or have the ability to connect to water supply and or wastewater services. The Community Board agrees that it is important for the district and those connected to the water supply and wastewater services that adequate systems are in place to be able to deliver and support future growth to the district. Option 2 provides an equitable distribution of funding across the district and allows for future upgrades and ongoing maintenance costs, particularly for those in smaller communities, for example, Whangaroa. We read this in conjunction with the examples and information provided. Community services, number 3. We support the status quo. Bay of Islands Whangaroa Community Board is the most affected by this decision out of the 3 community board areas, with the below facilities: Kaikohe Service Centre and Library, Kaikohe Service Centre, JBC and Library, Kaikohe Service Centre and Eyesight, Kaikohe Library in a separate standalone facility. This is a historically classified building and includes also a museum. Kaikohe Service Centre and Library, and while the Community Board understands that more people prefer to move to the use of online or digital services, borrowing and reading library books, raising RFSs, paying rates, fines and fees, etc., we recognise the need for service centres and libraries to be physically accessible for those in local communities. We believe as a community board that reducing service centres would affect the marginalised and the elderly the most. We think that there must be other areas within council that cost cutting could occur rather than the front-facing services that connect council to our communities. We also feel consideration should be given to the visitor needs and economic benefit in relation to these services provided. The examples provided, council has stated that by selecting option 1 or option 2, that this will lead to a reduction in accessibility and will have a negative impact on community and create customer disruption. The community board would like to see the usage rate of the individual service centres assessed prior to making decisions to allow for this decision to be reassessed at a later date. If the issue is resource allocation spread across multiple locations, then the community board suggests that the staff be trained in multiple skill sets. This would enable them to provide the required services in libraries and service centres. Additional information. The first thing we would like to comment on is the Community Grant and Placemaking Fund. Community expresses the need and importance to maintain the Community Grant Fund and Placemaking Fund over the next 3 years. Both funds allow for projects or services to be delivered by local communities for local communities. Often both funds are the only way for communities to access external funding, with the community board providing a minimal amount of funding in exchange for greater outcomes. It has been demonstrated that communities can deliver projects at a lower cost than council through discounted rates of products, services, volunteers, and discounted staff time, for example, as Kaikohe Community Trust. Without the funding provided through grants, the community board notes that several large-scale projects would not have taken place this year or would have required to be scaled back. An example of this is the $22,500 allocated just recently to Business Kaikohe for the sound and lighting system for the Matariki event of 2024. Or the $5,000 allocated to Ngāti Honey Trust. This was to build a walkway at the beginning of the northern end of the cycleway in Kaikohe. While the purchase of materials was funded by the community board, the labour alone for this project is estimated to be $25,000. That's a $30,000 project, only $5,000. The community board is looking to evolve the way we allocate funding to ensure greater strategic outcomes for the community in exchange for the funding spent. The Placemaking Fund also promotes effective community engagement and partnerships with iwi, kapu, community volunteer groups and other external agencies. Without these funds, we run the risk of losing our extremely dedicated volunteers who drive community action and outcomes. The second point we'd like to raise is in relation to the reserve management plans. The community board supports the continuation of reserve management plans being created and updated, and the resources required to undertake this work. Reserves play an integral part in our local communities and need to be able to meet the community and future needs of those communities. The community board sees the Placemaking Fund as an ideal way to seed fund future projects that arise from reserve management plans that will continue to empower those communities. Footpaths. The community board recognises the importance of providing footpaths in both rural and urban areas of our district and allow members to walk safely and provide an alternative mode of transportation. Previously, footpaths have been funded with subsidised funding from central government. However, until the National Land Transport Plan was adopted, the only funding for new footpaths is $155,250 per year through the community board. In order to provide alternative modes of transportation, this budget will not be adequate to deliver on the community board's footpath program, which would need to be scaled even further back. The community board was fortunate enough to be able to select 3 large-scale footpath projects to deliver, If the subsidised funding is not allocated and the budget is scaled back, the community board may be funding one project a year or needing to stage the delivery of a footpath over 3 years of the budget. The 2024 to 27 footpath programme was presented to the Kaikohe Transport Committee meeting on the 23rd of April 2024 with a total of $2,285,000 budget to deliver 3 projects utilising the subsidised funding. The cheapest of these projects is $605,000, which the community board could not deliver, even if the 3 years worth of funding were staged over 3 years. I'd like to mention the roundabout for Cobham Road and Honeypiki and Kirikiri at the intersection of Kirikiri, Cobham and Honeypiki Road, sorry. The community board supports the installation of a roundabout at the end of Cobham Road and Honeypiki Road, Kirikiri. With 5 education facilities located on Honeypiki Road, this intersection is congested each morning and afternoon during the school term, creating further congestion in the town centre. There is also a safety risk in not providing this roading upgrade. More and more children are attempting to cross the road from Mill Lane, and it is an accident waiting to happen. If funding is not allocated towards this, the community board supports the idea of a targeted rate within the Kirikiri subdivision as an option to fund the project. A Vision Kirikiri representative spoke at the Kaikohe Transport Committee meeting in relation to the importance of this roundabout and supported the consideration of a targeted rate to fund this project. Town beautification. Community board requests that the town beautification budget be reinstated into the long-term plan 2024-27. This budget will assist in delivery of community pride and outcomes, which enhance not only our towns, but the smaller villages and settlements in rural areas that are often overlooked. The community board requests the opportunity for input into potential locations and projects that this budget is utilised for in line with the community board's strategic plan. Alfresco dining. Consideration should be given to alternative charges and fees when issuing alfresco dining licences. Currently, businesses pay a fee per table in their designated area. Examples of changes for charges to this could include charging by the overall square meterage of the alfresco area, or per seat or number of people to be seated in the alfresco area. This would allow for easier monitoring and using of the alfresco area and will create a fairer user pays charge. Proposed increased water tariff. The community board is concerned with the proposed increase of the treated water tariff. As at the 1st of April 2024, a per cubic metre rate was charged at $3.92. Proposal is to increase this rate to $4.77. Based on the average household consumption of a family of 4, the charge would go from $1,299 a year to $1,580. This is an annual increase of 21.7% additional to the property rate rise. With the proposed property rate rise, this additional charge will put many households in the far north under a lot of financial stress. Council needs to consider how to charge all consumers of public treated water outlets, for example, caravan, campervan dump and filling stations, so that the cost does not fall on the ratepayer.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the members?
Yes, I after
Councillor McNally.
just related to stormwater, what stormwater do you understand this applies to? You talk urban and rural.
We had difficulty understanding the actual question. In fact, we had a deputation at our last community board meeting from Hapu saying they couldn't actually understand the questions and what it was that you were wanting to achieve. It was very confusing, and we as a board struggled.
So urban would be curb and channel, manholes and pipes underground and so sizes. Rural is road water tables. It was also the drainage districts. The other question I had was footpaths. How would you prioritise between footpaths and the rural and urban areas?
We actually have a very, very good matrix system for footpaths, which is amended and updated by Kaikohe. This is based around developments in our rural and urban areas, for example, schools, marae, churches, connectability between these villages and settlements. So when we do the matrix, there is also a tourism and residential component and visitor component built into that. It's quite a complex.
Historically, 21 to 27, land transport plan, footpath renewals, and that was 24, 25, 760, 25, 26, 875, 26, 27, 875. So there's never been much in the budget anyway.
It's renewals. This is capital works.
That is capital works. I'm talking about maintenance and operations. There's other amounts for that. Well, that was the question. How do we
prioritise it with the matrix, which is forever shifting along with the growth of our communities?
Some research. Yeah, my question was on that. Sort of sending alarm bells off when you're saying footpaths in urban and rural areas. Is that not a zoning problem? So if there's a high density of housing and it's actually zoned rural production, and obviously a need for some footpaths because a number of people actually are walking on the road, and I know that does happen, so I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But surely that's actually a zoning problem, because if you say rural, then I don't want the 5,000 hectare farm out wherever actually expecting a footpath there.
There's quite a lot to the matrix. That includes health and safety issues, which also includes things like speed zones, dust, the width of the sealed road carriageway. There's a lot of issues that are taken into account when we're looking outside a facility that may have hundreds or sometimes thousands of people visit that site, and the daily use of it within the community as well.
Chair Ward, Deputy Chair, thank you very much for your submission. Councillor Boyd, if you've got a very quick question, we have gone over time though.
Thank you, Memo. Can you hear me, everyone? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It was just a question for Angie and to you, Belinda. It surprises me that the elected members around this table and also the community boards haven't been given the list of which areas are in the area of benefit for stormwater and those that are defined in our financial impact statement, which are actually drawn and delineated as part of our infrastructure strategy, and also linking to targeted rates if you're in that area of benefit. In Kaitaia, we've got, it's not just Kaitaia, there's Pukenui, Whatuwhiwhi, and no, it's not curb and channel. There's a lot of stormwater areas that are just drained. So I'll ask Belinda, have you been given that list of which areas are targeted for stormwater and where those actual delineated maps are, so that your eastern communities can be clear about who actually is paying that stormwater rate or not?
We may have, but I don't recall it, Felicity. No. We really based our submission, I guess, more on flex routes. We have a lot of REBSs come in relation to stormwater and drainage from our rural areas, and it's an ongoing issue. Whether it's monitoring and enforcement of the contractors of the roads, it seems to be a lot of gravel blocking drains, a lot of vegetation blocking drains. We're very much, I guess, taking a more holistic approach submission in relation to this.
And just another question for stormwater. My last question, thank you, Mimoku, is about a lot of those things you've just raised there, Chair Belinda, is actually operational costs of stormwater. Are you aware as a board that there's no operational funding to maintain our stormwater network as part of that target rate, and that's only a capital rate? and what operational stormwater issues there are for your area. You've talked about those there that's not been addressed by our council infrastructure strategy or work program currently.
Yeah, the operational side of it, I guess, will be the next step in the discussion in the room.
I just take from that that we can build them, but we can't maintain them. That's a sad comment.
Sounds like the 72 toilets we have.
Sorry.
Thank you both very much for your submission and for your ongoing effortless work. Thankless work that you do for our community in the Bay of Islands and Whangaroa. Just before we get into our next submission, for our elected members who are online, added into the chat box for this is the printed copy of submissions that we've received, which are in order. If you are using the draft submissions that we sent out yesterday, those aren't in order. So if you could just access the one that's in order, move to those page numbers. If you have any issues, please just comment in the chat box or reach out to us. Our next submission is from Kaikohe, the Twin Coast Cycle Trail. And thank you by Tracy Dalton for the lollies you've provided to which I have shared around. We won't take that as a bribe. Your submission will be seen any more favourably than anyone else's, but we do appreciate the lollies in any case. As before, there will be 10 minutes made available for your submission with 3 minutes for questions. And I'm happy the written submission is available on page 5, and I'm happy to pass this time over to you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm the trail manager. I'm employed by the governance entity that supports the relationship between council and the communities, landowners and people of the community of this area that the cycle trail traverses from Poriki through to Okura. I haven't got any answers for the technical questions there, councillor Steve, but I've come to support, represent the community who love their asset, and I've come to acknowledge that there's some money in the roading and footpaths budget of 4 million for this next financial year. I wish to acknowledge that the community trust of the cycle trail acknowledges it's got a role in sourcing external funding. We intend to maintain the Great Ride status, which enables some funding coming through, but we also acknowledge there's other avenues required. As everyone's aware, there is a process with a resource consent being prepared, a legal relation agreement with Kiwi Rail being prepared. This is being managed through Council's project manager, and that is a relationship I see being managed by Council. I see the role of the trust as an economic enabler with the community, hapu and whānau. I believe that we have in the past 5 years developed a sense of trust amongst communities who were hesitant to see visitors coming through on the Lycra cycles, and now they recognise this is an opportunity for them to create their own employment and host people in their communities. We also have a 10-year strategic plan, and I've just identified 2 in the submission to show that we hear what communities want and support, such as a biodiversity corridor between Taumata Makuku and Moerewa, whereas between Kaikohe and Kaikohe we have a significant pesty, weedy stretch, and that is also a significant area to become more biodiversity friendly. We would like more support from the technical expertise of the council staff to assist with that strategic plan of ours being aligned to the LTP and all future plans going forward. To acknowledge the open spaces policy and strategy that the council has initiated, we, as the Cycle Trail Trust, recognise that we have a significant part to contribute and want to be recognised as a key stakeholder in developing that strategy due to the diverse communities we engage with and the area of land that isn't council reserve. To a question that was asked earlier this week or last week about how many people in the Opa to Taumarere section were using the trail. I went through the figures. Pre-COVID was 40,000 of the 140,000 people recorded on the counters. This is a matrix of the users. It doesn't capture each user because we only have 6 counters strategically sited along the trail. Once the connector train was running last year, we increased the users in the Opa to Taumarere area, which had dropped back to less than 10,000, back up to 17, almost 18,000. This doesn't mean they were always using the train and doing the complete section, but they were using that section between Opa and the train. I acknowledge the economic challenges ahead of your LTP and a catch-up of important works for the community good, public good. I just want to say, although we support all of that, we implore that we remain as part of your special project program in an internal level at operations.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members?
Tracy, if council doesn't provide any money, i.e. the 4 million in the LTP, what does that mean for the cycle trail?
Well, it's really helpful if your bowl or your cap has got something already in it when you go looking for further filling up of that bowl or cap. I'm talking about external sources of funding. I think that because the trail is recognised as an asset owned by council, they need to have skin in the game, and that's what we would ask, that there is a commitment to seeing this project continue. If it needs to be staged, that's a decision that's worked out strategically, internally, and we're just here representing the community and the trail users and the small businesses that have set themselves up to operate along the cycle trail.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Foy, then Councillor Court, then Councillor Lucas.
Kia ora, Tracy. Namahi, thank you for your presentation. Just for the costs of the consenting for the resource consent, how much will it cost to get the technical specialist input and go through that process to have the resource consent and the legal documents for security of tenure if council were to just provide funding to secure that aspect to ensure that that is secured before we move on to any capital investment once we know that we can actually do it and it's consented.
Kia ora, Councillor Foy. That work is currently being done by a project manager operated by engaged by the council. We're working alongside of them. My understanding is that project is nearly completed with costings and design to submit to Kiwi Rail, but I am not the technical lead on that piece of work.
So that would be a question we could direct to our staff ourselves to get a response. We'll go to Councillor Court.
That was my question, but I just want to expand on that a little bit. So for my clarity, the cost of the resource consent and the cost for the legal agreement with Kiwi Rail, it's your understanding that it's already funded? It's in traction, and it's in progress, whether it's completed. I don't know if we need any more money. That is something the project manager doesn't share with me. It shares with senior management. And the $4 million seed funding is your words, you need some skin in the game. That would only be called upon if you were able to match funding from an external source, is that correct?
I haven't said that, but I understand that it wouldn't be my decision to see how that money was spent. The role of the trust is not to project manage that money or that reinstatement of the trail.
I'm just trying to get clarity if it's seed funding that's there in case, which is one thing, or it's $4 million cash that you can pull out straight away. That's quite another thing. It has a profound rating implication, and I'm just not clear on that. So I think we'll follow that one up. Thank you. Yes.
Councillor Lucic.
Thank you, Tracy. So this is the only great ride in the whole of Tokoroa, and I understand Wellington will not have any more great rides.
Correct.
Is there a risk of losing the great ride status? And what do we need to do to ensure we don't lose it?
Great ride status is the fact that it is a premier opportunity for cycling. It requires a multi-night, multi-day experience. If you reduce the length of the cycle trail, which is currently 85 to 87 kilometres, depending on whether you include the kilometre past Horiki, it would lose the status. The other thing that the Poherenga Tai has, it is only one of two of the great rides that provides an easy access gradient for all cyclists of all abilities to access and use. The majority of them are mountain bike treks through dockland, hills, mountains, roads. Just to add to that, Councillor Vucic, they won't be doing any more great rides. This is it.
We'll take a final question from Chair Ward.
Just clarification, you refer to the great ride. Is it the initial trail from Horiki to Kaikohe or from Horiki to Opua?
From Horiki to Opua. That is my understanding, but that relationship is with council, and the trust has not been involved in any of those the confirmation. The asset's owned by council.
Right, we do have a minute left. Deputy Mayor Stratford. Fire Tracy, thank you very much for your verbal submission to council today. Can I please just note with our group managers and head of infrastructure who are in the room today, and actually all staff, what I don't find helpful is when we have tamariki of this council itself, whether it be our Bay Islands Community Board or one of our CCOs, the Poherenga Tai Twin Coast Cycle Trail, having a process where they submit to our long-term plan. But what I'm hearing from both is gaps in effective communication with them in-house, because they're effectively in-house submitting to us. That is not helpful in the way that they can actually submit to this council itself. So if they're having trouble with information or communication with themselves, which is us, to be able to give an effective submission, then I wonder how the general public is in being able to have information to make submissions there. So just highlighting that one as one that I never want a branch of this tree to be here saying that they actually don't know or feel that they don't have access to levels of information that I think that they should have access to. And that might be both ways for the communication. I'm just raising it as something that I picked up from our first two submissions that I want to highlight and make sure that we plug. Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Our next verbal submission is from Clark's Coach Line, and we have Perry Clark. Yeah. Welcome, Perry. For our council chamber, you have 10 minutes for your verbal submission with an additional 3 minutes for questions, and I'm happy to pass the time over to you.
Thank you.
Sorry, on page 8.
Mayor and councillors and council managers. I prefer to stand if you don't mind. I was happy to this here and they took it away. I've never given this speech sitting down in my life, so it's, I prefer to stand. So my name is Perry Clark and I come from the southern area of the Far North District Council, namely the Murrumbidgee Valley. My family's been there for 5 generations. And so we're fairly well established in that area. I speak to you today as a resident. I'm not really here with my cap on as the manager of Clark's Coach Lines. I speak to you as a resident of the rural areas of the Far North District Council.
You have spoken and we have heard.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. There's some lots of.
Although we do operate bus services, school bus services over a wide area of the Far North District Council, stretching from Kaikohe in the south to the southern edge of the Mangamuka Range, and from Rafili in the east through to Waimara in the west. So we cover quite a huge area of the Far North District Council. I must say, I do not know a lot about what happens north of the Mangamuka Ranges. What happens south, I have a lot to do with. You could say that we are one of the major users of the rural roading network. I have great concerns that the council has lost sight of the major reason that councils first came into existence, and that was to provide a satisfactory roading network for the areas that they represent. At Murrumbidgee, the road through the centre of the community, which ran the school around Clark's Garage through to the railway station, was completed in 1958. About a kilometre of road. 1972, the road from the railway station to State Highway 1 was completed. We are very grateful for this. However, we were promised that we were on the list for the Murrumbidgee-Matawai Road from Murrumbidgee as far as Mototau to be done next. Now, in case you haven't worked it out, it's been 51 years. Have you lost the list? The residents of Murrumbidgee and Mototau are patiently waiting, but absolutely no tar sealing extensions have happened in 51 years. It's been a long wait. I get the impression that some councillors don't even know where Murrumbidgee or Mototau is. I think some of the councillors and the council staff who made these promises and were on the board at the time are now dead. But we're still waiting. The Maramaku to Motatau section of the Maramaku-Matawai Road carries a huge amount of traffic. Our company operates 10 bus trips along this road each day, and it is in shocking condition. We also have the Motatau Primary School, and the very prestigious Motatau Marae is on this route. The marae holds a lot of meetings and seminars, as well as tangi, which generate a considerable amount of traffic. This is also a through route from Tauwai through to Kaikohe, or alternatively Moerewa. This route is an alternative to State Highway 1 when that is closed, as sometimes happens from time to time. It has been overlooked for upgrading for many years. It has been forgotten, or just that you don't know what happens on this road. It's too far away from Kaikohe. I'm concerned that there are many groups and individuals who look to this council to provide funding for all sorts of projects that are nice to haves, but are not essential. I look in disbelief at the monument on the corner of State Highway 10 and Kerikeri Road. Surely the Far North District Council did not provide any funding for this. If they didn't, it will be remembered as a monument to stupidity. What a colossal waste of money. Anybody who supported this should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. Why should we waste money on such an eyesore when we have hundreds of kilometres of unsealed roads in the council? It's not good enough. I do cruise ship tours, and I say to my people on the cruise ship, take a look at this. What do you think it is? They have no idea. A monument to stupidity. China, in the last 20 years, has built hundreds and thousands of kilometres of new highway. I've been there and I've seen them. The Chinese have an old proverb: if you want to be rich, build the roads first and the commerce will come. Now, I have several family members, distant second cousins, who have moved off from Maramaku. Their children have grown up, and some of them have become quite educated. We have 2 doctors, physiotherapists, among others, and they have long had a hankering to return home to Maramaku. And we've had a couple, but they're free to come home. They've tried it, but they've only stayed 2 or 3 years, and then they move again, usually to Whangarei. When I ask them why, the answer is always the same. It's the roads. We just get sick and tired of the mud and the slush in the winter and the dust in the summer. It's not only the car, but it gets tramped into the house. You can't open the windows in the summer. The dust gets into everything, through the wardrobes, the kitchen, the cupboards. It's just too much. I don't know how you put up with it. For rural residents, the council often only provides one service, and that is the road. Sometimes there is a waste collection, and that's great, but there is no water supply. There is no sewage system. There is no library. There is no stormwater. There's nothing else but a road. All we want is a tar sealed road. We look at Envy over the border in the Whangarei district, which is quite close to us. They are making steady progress with their road sealing program. Does the Far North District Council even have a road sealing extension program? Now, I know the statement will be made that we are not as well off as some other district councils. My answer to this is that the council does not have their priorities right. You can't do a budget and then say, well, whatever's left over, we'll spend on road seal extensions. You've got to do it the other way around. We need to have a budget, a set amount for kilometres for new seal extensions each year, possibly 20 to 30 kilometres. You put that in the budget first, and then you make do with what's the rest of the money spread out amongst the other projects. This is the priority. It's very nice to have skateboard parks, monuments to stupidity and other nice to haves. But the essentials must be a good roading network. I look around the Far North District Council area and I see roads half completed. The road into the Tati village is only half completed. Sections of it are done and sections of it are still gravel. These residents in Tati are putting up with dust and mud all year round. Another one is the Rafferty Road, from the Rafferty Junction through to the Rafferty Marae. Once again, only half the road is completed. I understand some wealthy residents have paid for sections of the road to be sealed. That's great, but you are still having to send the grader 30 kilometres each way because it's out on the limb to grade the unsealed sections. 60 kilometres of grader at $10 a kilometre, $600 just to get the grader there to grade these short sections. Surely it makes sense to tar seal it. The Waimeo Road, one of the major tourist attractions of the north, is the Kaikohe Caves on the Waimeo Road, but it's only 600 or 700 metres in from the state highway, but a gravel road. I see people stop and look and think, oh, that's a gravel road, I won't go. Turn around and come back out again. The Waimeo Road urgently needs sealing as far as the old school, approximately 1.2 kilometres. Not much, but it would make a big difference to this attraction. Maramaku to Mototau needs to be top of the list. Others are Maramaku Tawai Road, Callaghan's Road, Marlow Road. About 20 years ago, I had two classmates from high school who got themselves elected onto the council. In 3 short years, they managed to get 3 roads sealed: the Kawakawa to Karatu Road, the Kawakawa Road to Matawaia as far as Kaka Road, and the Orauta Road up as far as the Orauta School. Again, about 5 kilometres. After this, they both did not stand for re-election. On speaking to Alan Nielsen, one of the two, I asked him how on earth they had managed to achieve so much in such a short time. And he said, I quote, "VC," he said, "it isn't rocket science. We just borrowed a bit of money to get it done. We combined 3 years' money into 1 year and got the job done and then paid it back over the next 2 years." Unquote. I said, well, you should have stayed on because we're doing great. He told me, you don't know how many meetings we had to attend to get that done.
Mr. Clark, you have 2 minutes left.
Thank you. Now, besides seal extensions, I'm going to talk a little bit with my bus operator's hat on now. And that is that the roads are not being graded often enough. I'm often told that the grader spends a lot of time travelling from one urgent job to a next, and it's all over the district. Whereas in the old days, the grader would stay in a district and grade all of the roads in that district before it moved to the next one. Also, the water tables are not being cleaned enough. Some haven't been touched for 5 to 10 years. Is the contractor required to clean out water tables? Because I was at a public meeting at the Maramaku School about 10 days ago about flooding, and there was a man there stood up and said, the contractor, Ventia, is not required to clean out the water tables. It's not in their contract. Surely that can't be right. I'd like to know the answer. My observation is that Ventia is not providing value for money. I see a lot of guys running around in pickup trucks and not much work being done. I really feel that it would be more advantageous to have smaller contractors doing smaller areas. In conclusion, roads must be the #1 priority. The John Key government got stuck in and completed the motorway system in Auckland. That was their first priority. And what a difference it made when the motorways were linked up. It's made a huge difference. Set a goal, #2, set a goal of sealing extensions. 20 to 30 kilometres per year must be the #1 priority. If you could do 20 kilometres a year, in 10 years, you'd do 200 kilometres. What a difference that would make to the far north. It would be a huge difference. Don't waste money on nice to haves and unnecessary projects. Nice to have concrete paths everywhere Our country people are still choking on dust day after day. Get the roads sealed first, please. I believe we have some of the lowest portion of sealed roads of any district council in New Zealand. We should be ashamed of that. There's no reason. The only reason we have that is because councils for the last 50 years have not made seal extension a priority. I'm hoping that this council can change things. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. Now we have run out of time for questions. I note in your submission, your contact details have been omitted. If any members here did have specific questions they'd want to reach out to connect with you on, are you happy for our staff to share your contact details with council members so they can do so?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And can I just say, I will pass on your feedback about the sculpture at the entrance to Kaikohe to Minister Jones, who paid for that from the Provincial Growth Fund. But nothing that you've said in this, in your submission is new to my ears, and I think you can feel not comfortable with that. At least you can know that this is, everything that you've said is definitely top of the mind for myself and for this council here. And we definitely have food for thought from your submission on how we vote for our budget lines for this upcoming long term. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Very good. Thank you.
Our next submission, verbal submission, can be found on page 9. And we have the Ohio Taimai Residents Association. We have Michael Drayton, and we also have and some recognisable supporters in the room. Please feel free to take a seat or to stand. Whether you feel comfortable. We're grateful for you taking the time to make a submission and to come into council today, and I'm happy to pass the time over to you.
Ka hika te pania nā koe, hira tēnā koutou. Ko Michael Drayton, rātou ko Tracy Albert, ko Jonah Aslan, ko Mata Ringoa, o Highway, Mata. We are from the township of Ohio. Thank you to the staff who put the slides up. Here's an aerial picture of Ohio. We have put in a submission to ask funding for drainage improvements in our town. So before I get on to that, let me just orient you. This is Ohio, 10 kilometres or so to the west of here. State Highway 1 coming in from the top from Whangarei. Take a right-hand turn at the pub on the corner to keep going north on State Highway 1, or keep driving on State Highway 12 past the rugby club to end up in Kaikohe. If you turn left onto Hobson Street at the dairy, you go past the public toilets and down to the church in the bottom right and the school in the right-hand corner. Just to orient you with Ohio, this is the rohi that we are talking about. We have had problems with flooding, surface flooding in our town for more than a decade. Going back in time, before we get to those arrows, please, going back in time, this surface water used to drain out on swale drains, both sides of Hobson Street out to the southwest, and both sides of Tennyson Street, to the southwest, Hobson Street to the southeast. And another swale drain down past the rugby club. Now, over time, these swale drains have lost their effectiveness. They've not been maintained. You can see that other constructions happen. They do not do the job that they were intended to do. And in fact, just tend to pool up with water, which creates ponding. There is a covered drain at the location of that top red arrow, northern end of Hobson Street, which goes into a concrete pipe underground, takes the water out down the side of State Highway 12 towards the Pekapeka Stream. That at the moment is the main source of drainage, surface water drainage in Ohio, and it is inadequate. The residents have been concerned for some time, and this drain was cleaned out at the end of 2022. ahead of the very wet winter that we had. So what I'm going to show in these next few pictures are some photos taken at the locations of these red arrows. And then on where the yellow arrows are, some pictures in dry weather to give you an idea of the sort of works that we'd like to see happen to alleviate the problems. So on the next slide, if you were to drive into, turn left into Hobson Street, this is the view in May of last year. Public toilets are just off to the left. Tracy's whare is just on the right. Remember that the drain was cleaned out at the end of 2022, so it was working as well as could be expected. And this was the result. This was an exceptional rainfall event, we don't dispute that, but this is not unusual to see surface flooding in town because the drain here is just overwhelmed. Now, upgrading that drain in a hard engineering solution would be very, very expensive, and we're not asking for that. We are asking that this drain is well maintained, but what we would like to see happen is some way of removing the excess floodwater away from this drain and reducing the demand on it. Water used to flow out to the south, but you can see in the distance there, that area is dry because the swale drains are not taking water out there. Floodwater is also coming from the houses to the right, across the surface, through the sections, because water is no longer being taken out down Tennyson Street. So what we would like to see is some simple, cost-effective way of reducing the demand on the drain at this location. So on the next picture, I have a slide showing a house in Tennyson Street, which you can see has water ponding in front of the house. Now, this may not look particularly dramatic. Clearly, it's difficult for the residents to get in and out. But remember that in our highway, we are all septic tanks. And when the water table is above the ground, septic tanks cannot function. So the whānau in this house cannot use their plumbing. They can't have a shower, they can't use the sink, they can't flush the toilets. So the families in these houses with their young children have had to leave town for days until the floodwaters either soak away or flow slowly across to the right of the picture towards Hobson Street and be taken away through the overwhelmed drain. And of course, when the ground is this wet, every new bit of rain creates the same problem, and the residents have to move out again. We've had families in that situation time and time again. Now, if you notice on the bottom of the picture here, there is a footpath, a very lovely footpath, which we like, and it's dry. So the next photo shows the view from the house, looking back towards the street. And you can see that the footpath has created a dam, which has stopped the water from flowing towards the street to be taken away in the swale drains along the side of the road. So the solution is not rocket science. The footpath is creating a huge problem here, stopping the surface water from going away. If the footpath was not there, the ground wouldn't become saturated, the septic tanks wouldn't be overwhelmed, the whānau wouldn't have to move out. So one option would be to remove the footpath and rebuild it in a way that doesn't prevent the floodwater draining away, which could be costly, or put some culverts in underneath the existing footpath to drain the water into the swale drains, which need a bit more attention to make sure that they drain consistently out of town and are not interrupted. That is the type of simple, cost-effective work that we would like to happen in our highway to greatly reduce the flooding problem. The final picture is just to show that it doesn't always rain in our highway. And when the weather is fine, you can see examples of the swale drains. On the right, this is the southern side of Tennyson Street. And the driveway, you can see a culvert in the distance. The driveway in front doesn't appear to have a culvert. So the water is impeded. The photo on the left-hand side is showing the western edge of Hobson Street, the southern end of town, demonstrating that the water cannot leave town through this swale drain because it simply stops. And it needs a culvert through underneath that driveway. So we're not talking about high-tech solutions here. We feel that a day or two with a digger and some culverts could largely solve this problem. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou.
Thank you very much to you all. Go to Councillor Vesich.
Thank you, Michael. I have to admit, I'm pleased with your submission, but I don't know how many years ago when we were out there, and everything you actually pointed to was exactly what we agreed should be done. And that was passed on, and I thought it was action. So I'm really a bit disappointed not to see an action out of this, because as I understand, and so here's the question is, there were farms involved with it, we exited, and there was willingness to actually take that water as elsewhere as well. And is that correct? So in other words, you went for a really simple, common sense and cheap solution.
Yes. The landowner to the south and behind the rugby club is Murray Cravat, who's not here today, but he has joined several of our meetings, and he has said to us, this water's got to go somewhere. It's not right that families are having to leave their homes.
Yep.
So he is very happy to work with us for the water to go onto his land, so long as it doesn't create problems on his land. He's very happy to cooperate.
And also, if I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of those culverts along those swale drains were actually very small and undersized.
Potentially, yes. But keeping them clean as part of perhaps the maintenance contract would go a long way.
Thank you, Michael. We'll go to Councillor Foy.
Thank you for your presentation, Michael. Just a question for staff, and I don't know if you've had a response. If a highway is in the area of benefit for stormwater and paying the targeted rate towards stormwater, like I think there's 11 communities in our district that pay that rate, so that there's a bucket of money to gather for stormwater and pay for stormwater works. Is a highway paying that currently? And if so, which of these properties is in that area of benefit or not?
No. No.
Okay. So my next question is, would a highway look to propose to be in the area of benefit or do a targeted rate to create a bucket of money in order to pay for these works? Because there's many other communities in the district that have been paying for many decades, and that's why a targeted, why a rate is created to create a bucket of money to do these works.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, is a community supportive of paying rates to address stormwater issues in your township?
Yes. In our discussions, we have thought about how much this would cost. We haven't actually gone and costed it, but I think I've made it clear that we've kept the solution very simple. When it comes to funding, you will understand that the residents' reaction is, well, what have we been paying our rates for? So the first step is to come to council to present this. I think, looking at my colleagues, that if we came away with a funded solution, that the works would happen in a short space of time, then we could have that conversation about targeted rates. I think we're very quick to discuss who's going to pay before we know how much needs to be paid. But we would happily engage in a conversation to see progress on this quickly.
Thank you for that. Final question from Councillor McNally.
Just a quick declaration. I've known this fellow since he was much smaller, because he's the nephew of my first wife. There were two culverts you showed on your slides there, both without, two driveways without culverts. How long ago were they done? Because under our, they should have been, well, answer that question. How long ago?
We actually don't know, but we presume that unless they were done after the houses were built,
I've been there a long time.
Well, yeah, presumably.
Well, I've been there 27 years.
Yeah.
So the reason I asked that question is that it's the landowner's responsibility to install those culverts, as I understand it, under our policy. So they should have a culvert of about 300 or 350 wide. The one that goes, I think it goes into the farmers that stops down Hobson Street. I presume that's the water, where the water flows.
I understand.
That's downhill.
It cannot at the moment.
Yeah, I know that, if it was culverted.
If
That's
it's-
downhill.
That's the way it would flow. It's quite a drop.
So water, as most of us know, water flows downhill, but he can't actually stop you putting that water into that area because what will flow has to be downhill to us. But I'd suggest that he needs to put a culvert in there first and foremost. That may not be that palatable. But from the roading perspective, I like what both Perry and yourself, Michael, have presented because these are the key issues that are fundamental to what we're trying to, the reason I stood again was actually just trying to sort this stuff out. And yeah, so those are the two questions I want to answer. Thank you.
Clarity, if I may. When I went there again, as you know, I thought the culvert was put in and created part of the problem. The footpath created part of the problem. So is that correct? So in other words, the community council action and the swell drains that got blocked may have occurred after as well. So, and prior to that was okay. And are you, and I thought also the local community was willing to actually, if they had permission, get out there and do the job.
The footpath, yes, has created that problem, the damming on those houses. And yes, the community wants to see a solution. So we're willing to get out and get stuck in. It's an area, of course, where residents do not have a lot of disposable income. So cost is always an issue, but we're willing to work with council on that.
All right, then.
Last
Question.
Does the community have any statistics on the negative effect that the flooding has had on the community? Because we've seen the flooding around the public toilets in the seepage area. Has that had a negative effect on the health of the community members who live there?
Statistics. I don't know that we can put statistics on that. Having the soakage area of public toilets underwater is not recommended in terms of public health. The drains take considerable time for the water to soak away, and there is some concern because they're quite deep. That could even be a drowning hazard for small children. There is a school there; they do like to run, and that's a hazard if you have small children running past deep ponds of stagnant water.
Thank you. Ohawa Taimai Residents Association, thank you very much for your verbal submission today. And I hope we'll be able to find some solutions for your community. Can I just make a point to members to make sure that everyone's treated fairly with the same allocated time for questions and such, so that some people end up missing out, some people get extra questions when you try and jump in there. That if we do run out of time and I call it closed, that if you have additional questions, then you reach out for them to request submitters for their contact details. Just so everyone's treated fairly. Our verbal submission can be found on page 18. And we have Diane Daniels, who is a member of the New Zealand Board of Merit. Diane, thank you for your written submission that we have before us, and I'm happy to pass you for your verbal submission today.
Korua, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Kelly, or Di Daniels, I hope. Okay, so I have two issues that I have raised. I did actually have a fancy PowerPoint, but apparently I can't plug it in here. So I'm hoping that Bill can print off the PDF that I've just emailed him, because they had photos and stuff in there, but so I'll just use it as my cues. My initial reason for a submission was to do with the libraries and the proposed and long-term plan to cut the libraries from 4 to 2, which is my understanding. I stand corrected if that's not right. I don't have any costings or anything like that about the cost of running the libraries, but I would say I come as an educator. I've a lifetime in education and community education, and right from tamariki, rangatahi, pakeke, kaumatua, right through. And most recently, I was involved in a tour of the Dora digital classroom bus, which was brought to Taitokoro by Far North District Council Libraries, Te Whatu Ora, Manage My Health, and Mahi Tahi. And so I would like to follow on from other discussions that what's nice to have and what's an essential service. And I would submit that libraries are not something that's just nice to have. So we do have a few copies. Excuse me. Can you just confirm that you want, because there was 3 PDFs? Oh, just this one will do. Just this one. Do you have this one? No, I don't. I emailed it to Will. Okay, so that would have come.
We'll try to get it up on screen while you're speaking. Sorry about that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So yes, so I'm a lifetime educator, and I've managed digital literacy programs for education to employment all around the country. But I've had quite a bit of involvement in Taitokoro before I lived here with the Computers and Homes program through Lodestar stores, and more recently, since I moved here in 2020, running the Digital Wings program, which got corporates to donate technical equipment, computers that have been decommissioned, working with a recycler, and then I was distributing them out to charities, marae, and Hauora groups, and just noting that Far North District Council was a contributor to that program as well. So how cool is that? Ta-da! How do I move it on?
Just say next slide when you're ready and we can move it on.
So it's just moving on its own.
Here's
your.
So if you just say next slide.
If we could just go back. Yeah. Okay, next one. Yes, thank you. Okay, so what I've heard a lot over the last 20 years is that libraries are just about books, and I would just like to really dispute that. And in particular in Far North District, the libraries are doing such an amazing job with all these services, access to free Wi-Fi. Honestly, if you knew the number of referrals that they get from WINS who just say, go to the library, write a CV, and then people don't even know how to use a computer, so then the librarians are showing them how to do that. So it's not just about books, it's not just about accessing information, it's about in our area where we have, you know, poor educational outcomes and high unemployment and limited opportunity in some places. The libraries are really providing such an amazing service, and I really want to applaud your council librarian staff. All of these things that you can see up there. I'm not going to do death by PowerPoint by reading everything. So just looking at the Te Ahu, even they say on their website about lifelong learning in our libraries, not just about books. They say we open our patrons view, we hope our patrons view our library as a town's living room. In Kaikohe, there's just a couple of the notices that they've been running, holiday programs, getting authors in to speak. Our libraries are really, really vibrant areas. And the need for libraries is increasing more and more and more with all the bank closures, services going online, and there's a kind of a misconception that everybody's got the internet at home and that everybody's got a cell phone. Through the work that I've been doing over the last 20 years and over the last January, February, March here in Taitokoro, the phones that a lot of families have got, they're sharing them between their family, one phone for the whole whānau. They are often below spec. They are the cheaper phones, maybe from the warehouse and other outlets. And we found when we were helping people to use the Manage My Health app that many of them were below spec to actually carry that application. So there are a lot of things that they can't do on the phones that they've got. So the libraries are there as backstop for that. When, you know, our area, we've had our previous speaker talking about the roads, and we have a lack of public transport. People can't just get on the bus and go to the library or go to somewhere like they can in the cities. Slide, thank you. So this was what I was involved with, and here we've got Kylie, who's one of the amazing librarians in Kaikohe and sometimes in Kirikiri. And we had resident tech geniuses who came on board the bus and helped people with their technical troubles. So some of them didn't even know how to use their phone properly to download an app. They had apps on there that they didn't know how to remove. So it was an amazing experience to be part of. I managed the tutors, sourced and managed the tutors from around the Rohe. And my husband was the driver. Okay, next slide, thank you. So I did table earlier the report that was put together that was sent to Whanau District Council. Awesome, thank you, with recommendations. And when you do get a copy of that, if you could make a note to see the impact highlights and the community feedback, where people were really delighted that they hadn't been forgotten, that a bus had turned up to help them with their information, with their tech, and we ran the bus side by side with the Whanau District Council's library bus where we could. The recommendations from that report were to strengthen the capacity in libraries and other community organisations, including digital marae. So you can see up there, align free tech support with your mobile library service. A copy of that should have gone via Tom Frost to this digital enablement group, and happy to work with people to identify funding resources if to actually increase staffing levels if possible. There is a proposed follow-up, but that's not in my hands. That's from Te Whatu Ora. Next slide, thank you. So this is a bit of a diversion on the end, and I know this is coming up, and I'm sorry I haven't taken note when it's going to be, submissions are going to be, but I did just kind of tag it on the end. My main purpose for being here today is about the libraries, because that is in the long-term plan. But I also note that Whanau District Council has some plans for mandatory desexing, registration and microchipping of cats. And that will be going to consultation soon. And I would also ask that dogs be included in that. I know we do have registration, but doesn't seem to be any desexing plans for dogs. Next slide, thank you. Too hard to read, but that just shows you in the red the sorts of stats that Coast to Coast Cats are collecting on the number of cats that are coming into care and that they're struggling to process. A lot of litters get sent elsewhere, and the same with pups. that get sent out of our area. The dumping and the cruelty and the neglect is a huge social issue. You're probably quite aware of the damage being done to kiwi by roaming dogs. I'll go over that. But honestly, when you look at these litters, there's like 10, 11, 12 puppies getting pumped out and these litters getting dumped, and the responsibility and the picking up the slack is going largely onto rescue organisations who are not funded and have voluntary workers. So I don't know how I'm going for time, but here's my final say. So in the different recommendations, that libraries to be retained and not cut, please. The libraries are not are nice to have. They're not for a niche group. They are for all, and they are really serving a lot of our communities that are struggling to access the resources and the information that a lot of the rest of us take for granted. Even increasing some technical and digital support on the mobile library bus. So that's that one issue, which was in my was it in 3C or something like that on the plan? And then my last one about the animals was an afterthought. And I just thought I would take this opportunity to raise a bit of awareness about that. So if whoever's working on this issue would think about including dogs when they're mandating de-sexing, working with Bay Bush Action, and working with encouraging actually the SPCA to actually act in uplifting cases of animal cruelty, and working in good faith with the local rescue charities. A lot of work and actually probably saving council some work as well. For example, Coast to Coast Rescue, Donadu's, Bay of Islands Rescue, and even Saving Hope Foundation in Auckland, which takes a lot of our unwanted animals down there to rehome within Auckland and around the rest of the country. So, mihi nui kia koutou katoa, nā reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora rā koutou katoa.
Tēnā koe, July. We have a couple of minutes if there are any questions from members. Incredibly succinct and well detailed submission. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So I've had 2 emails come in the last couple of days to make a submission just over an hour ago. I was instructed to come here to make a submission at 10:20 this morning. That's an hour ago. Have you overlooked my name, or am I not on the list now?
I'm sorry, is your name Bill?
Yes. Oh, it's all right. I was just beginning to wonder.
You're in the right place.
Yeah, well, I understood I was in the right place. Yeah. I thought it's only been, it didn't start till nearly or after 10. And I thought, oh, well, I'd be about third. And I'm beginning to wonder if I wasn't even on the list at all. As long as I'm on the list, that's fine.
You're on the list and you're up right now, and I apologise for the delay.
That's all right. I was just beginning to wonder.
It is a bit of a guessing game.
Yeah, that's
just fine. Make sure stuff that we give appropriate wording around the estimate that you give submitters for the next.
What time did you expect to start the submissions?
10 a.m. today. We started at 10:05.
And I was the what? Fifth one?
Six today.
Each one 10 minutes.
3 minutes for questions and a little bit of time before and after for introduction and closing.
And my instructions were to give my suspicion at 20, my submission at 10:20. And you knew that it wouldn't even start till 10 o'clock. I'm sorry.
I apologise, Paul.
You have
And you have
apologised.
been given an incorrect estimated time, and I'm asking our staff to make sure that further submitters have a more realistic time
Okay,
or sufficient wording around the time given so that they are not waiting for an entire hour before they actually submit to us.
yeah, the waiting I don't mind. I'm old, I'm 81 years old, and I waste time all day. It was just I was beginning to think I'm not even on the list, but that's all right. You apologised and I accept.
So we are the long-term plan people, because what I want to make sure we do is that everybody is greeted with caught up with and given a bit of a catch up on when they can be expected to come. So we don't have this someone waiting and now wondering whether or not they're even on the bloody list.
I didn't start wondering until about 10 minutes ago, and then I did start to.
And you already said it. I was actually going to have a break now, but do you know what? You're here and you're ready to go, so I'm happy to pass the time over to you.
If you're happy to pass, I'll go, although I'm a bit frazzled. Anyway.
We're on page 20.
Hopefully my submission will save a bit of council money. The council a bit of money. The first thing was about water, and I'm not quite sure how important it is, but our water line got broken into the house. It was buried 18 inches down, and there are 3 litre boxes have been put down right beside where the pipe comes in, and the pipe cracked. And we went through hundreds of dollars worth of water, which we didn't have to pay because we didn't know whose pipe it went down beside, whose letterbox post went down, which may have cracked the pipe. So we didn't have to pay for the water. But my first suggestion would be that for house water, they don't be buried 18 inches under the ground. If they leak, they go through thousands of litres of water and you don't notice it. Ours now lies on top of the ground, and if anything goes wrong, we can see it pouring water out. And I can't see any reason for house supplies of water to be buried 18 inches down under the ground where you can't see them if they start leaking. And, you know, we didn't have to pay because we didn't know whose letterbox post, 2 of them belong to the council now, had perhaps strained the pipe. So that's the first suggestion. I don't know if it's council rules that water pipes into a private home need to be buried a certain distance down. But struggling to find where the leak was because it was 18 inches down and could run everywhere. Cost us a lot of time, and the crack eventually cost the council a lot of water. The second submission is noise control. We have 5 council-owned properties surround our property. And the noise control people tell me that it's almost invariable flats, renters that make noise. Homeowners are very seldom called by, our noise control is very seldom called to owner-occupied houses. In fact, they told me it was 100% we get called out to rentals. We were constantly calling noise control for council-owned flats. First of all, it was 15 Butler Road. Council now owns 20 Butler Road. I don't think that was a council flat when we were complaining about it. But not the residential tenancies, the Resource Management Act clearly states noise under human control, apart from aircraft, trucks, etc. But in particular, well, perhaps not particularly, but private music that disturbs the peace, comfort, and convenience of a private home is excessive noise. The council has made a bylaw that my neighbour can play music at 50 decibels, which is probably about, it's a reasonably loud noise on a tin shed on my boundary 24 hours a day. We call noise control. They come up. The first one we called about complained about was 15 Butler Road, which is a council-owned property. The noise control officer refused to go into it because he didn't like the look of the people in there. I put my hand, and he turned to walk away. I put my hand on his arm and said, "It's okay, I'll come across with you." He said, "No, I'm not going there, and now I'm complaining that you assaulted me. You put your hand on my arm." The council instructed First Security that noise control did not have to come to any calls from me. Now, this is several years ago. They've also complained that 26 Butler Road punched the noise control officer in the nose. They, at one stage, I think the council said that they don't have to attend any calls on Butler Road. They do not have to call, did not have to call to any call, that they did not have to attend any calls to the council flats, and they did not have to attend to any complaints from me. And I know that the noise control officer said he was assaulted by a flat in Butler, and 26 Butler Road, and they didn't have to attend that. So if the council is paying First Security to attend calls, which they do not attend, and my daughter, who lives on the Kaikohe, said they no longer come even if you call them. They come, they park on the road, they're clocked by the GPS as being there, parking out on the road. They sit there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and drive away. They do no longer go in to where the noise is being made. They just park on the road and leave. So, and the last time I made a complaint, Ken Ward, who was a council employee, came to see me, then he went down and talked to noise control. It's a waste of time ringing. They just don't come. Or they do, and they park out on the road. I presume council get the bill. We never see them. My daughter has called them. She never sees them. But she knows they park out on the road because she's gone out and seen, watched till they come. They park up the road and then go. Now, there was one other thing. The council apparently has a long-term plan of putting a roundabout at the top of Oranga Road, driving a road across the Oranga Park. The council has bought properties. They've bought 16A and 16B. They've bought 20 Butler Road, and the road is never going to go through. I've talked to the council engineer and had a look at it and suggested, why don't they just go down the countdown entrance or come down until you get Butler Road and come down Butler Road? Why put two more big roundabouts, one at the top of Oranga Road and one on Butler Road, which are all on the plan? It's been on the plan for 20 years and it will never happen because the council's own engineer said, yes, it's ridiculous. So why do you, I only found about this because the council was going to buy my wife's house. They've already bought 16A and B, which they paid, I think, just over $1 million for. They've bought 20. I'm not quite sure how much they paid for that, but I think it was close to the 700,000 mark. And for years, they've owned 13 and 15 Butler Road. And that road has been planned for 20 years, and at least the bit that comes down Oranga Road and across the park is nothing but stupidity. If they want to take a shortcut, there is already a road in to Countdown. A one-way system going right round there might make sense. A big double lane road is stupid, and your own engineers have admitted that. So why the heck are you, and you refused to buy my wife's house when we said, oh, well, if we have to move, we will move. Council said, oh, no, it's not going to hit at the moment. It had by that time already been planned for 20 years, and it's again on the 20-year waiting list, and it will never happen. So why are you wasting time and money asking us if we wanted to sell our house? And my wife said, oh, well, no, but if you're going to put a road through, we will. Oh, well, we can't do it just now. You bought 16A and B, and you bought 20. And you've already owned 13 and 15. And it doesn't look like the road is ever going to go through. It's certainly never going to go across the Rangan Park and through our house and 20 and 16A and B you bought. That would be ridiculous. In fact, on top of that, the council decided that the trucks that service Countdown must run backwards, which means they come down Kirikiri Road. They were supposed to turn off and go down through the alongside where the kids' new school is. They were supposed to turn into Countdown, and the road is still there. They were supposed to turn in there, go through and out the other end. The council said, no, you've got to go back to front, which means they're trying to go out onto Kirikiri Road from the exit from Countdown, which means instead of turning left off Kirikiri Road, they have to cross Kirikiri Road. A truck and trailer unit, 50, 60 feet long, driving Countdown exit, they just pull out, they block the traffic. They have to give way to traffic coming down Kirikiri Road on their right. In fact, when turning right, they have to give way to all other traffic. They're pulling onto probably the busiest road in Kirikiri. They can't get out, so they just drive slowly across and turn right, blocking traffic going both ways. And they get away with it because they're breaking the law. They must give way to the traffic. They can't. They would never get out. And that has been going on maybe for 20 years. How long has Countdown been there? Council said, no, ignore the law, ignore the rules. You must run it backwards because we don't want you driving down through the main street of Kirikiri. If you don't want them driving down through Kirikiri, simply put a sign up, no left turn for heavy vehicles, or no heavy vehicles going down. It would go then around the roundabout and go out up, which is what they have to do now, but they're running backwards, so they can't get onto Kirikiri Road except by driving out a little exit and blocking traffic from both sides. And the only thing they can do, the truck drivers just quietly creep across the road and turn.
30 seconds left, and we do have a question from our deputy mayor.
Okay, well, sorry, I've been ranting because I've been irritated about it.
Kia ora, Mr. Galanders. When you say the noise control contractor comes and parks on the road, does the noise improve?
They don't even get out of their vehicle.
But has the noise improved?
No. The only reason it improved, the last time I called noise control, I rang the council and Ken Ward personally came down, talked to me, then he went and down and talked to the tenants. Noise control, don't even go there.
Thank you.
Thank you very
much. And that's not just from me, that's from my daughter, who's at the other side of Kirikiri and said, you ask them to come and they don't. And you go out and look and wait and they park up the road, never get out of their car. 10 minutes later, they drive away and put in a report that they've been.
Thank you, Mr.
Now,
Gillard.
that should save you a bit of money. Get rid of it. If Ken Ward personally has to come and attend to my complaint, and I don't anymore. In fact, the last time I went and had a talk to one of the tenants in the house making a noise, he said, "Oh yes, I was warned about you." I hadn't been there long. I was warned about you. All the other council flats and properties, because I got to the point where.
Final comments. Thank you, Mr. Gillard.
You have to wrap it up.
All right, I got to the point, I said, I will ring the court and apply to the court to have you evicted, and they quieten them down.
Thank you very much for your verbal submission to our long-term plan today. I'm going to call a 15-minute break now. I know that and following that we have Mr. Wally Hicks on my list, but I do need to go toilet, so we'll be having a.
That's all right. Thank you very much for listening.
Those online, if you can make sure you're back at 12. For Manuhiri in the room, please feel welcome to come get a tea or coffee. Good day, everyone, and welcome back to our long-term plan. Members, long-term plan submission, verbal submission hearings. We will start with Matua Wally Hicks. His written submission can be found on page 21. Great to have you in chambers with us, and I'm happy to pass the time over to you.
Kia tātou katoa. Kia moko, ko whai Kelly, Matt and Kaunihira. My written submission is before you. I did it on the Whānau District website. I do hope to be coming back to do another one because I submitted a third one by email about dogs, and I just wanted to. It sort of, in some ways, doesn't matter how I use my time because various reasons, but I wanted to start by making a couple of connections just for myself. I lost a car in the May 14th floods last year, for no fault of my own, in the at Rangiahua, and that is what prevented me from coming and speaking orally to submissions about the Turner Centre in Kaikohe. And I also strongly related to what you said, Kei Moko, to Tracy Dalton about the connections with Whānau District Council. And I'd like to point out my own. So ko wale heksa ho, ko kōku is my kainga, and I am here as a citizen, but I am here also as a citizen with some connection to council through a couple of things. And one of them is that I've been involved in not one but two of the visioning processes that we do. So this is a council thing because these documents, I'm sorry I don't have slides, I could have done better at this. I just have to hold the documents up for you. Tirohana Vision Kōrukō 2018, which is the revision of Vision Kōrukō 2008. So my divergence at the moment will come back to my submissions. Another document, Kōrukō Heritage Precinct. This is two eminent New Zealand architects who wrote this. Tony Watkins, who up us back to Running Point, and Graham North from Warkworth. And one of the peculiar things that this says is this: unity within diversity can be achieved by adopting a common ethical position or common ethical purpose. An example of that would be our world's best first equal COVID-19 response, which upheld the first principles of natural ethics, which was the sanctity of life and self-preservation by all. So my submission online concerned a couple of things. And with regard to that, I'd like to recommend to you a very recently released documentary. Hope some of you might write it down, some of you might watch it. It's called Eco-Sophia. Eco-Sophia, one word, which means ecological wisdom, released in the last few days, as far as I know, built and made in Australia. And lo and behold, it's doing what I have kind of been doing for a few years, and plenty of other people, I might add. And it calls what I'm going to address, it calls it relocalization, which is another good name, because I think that kind of new ideas, new concepts of old things and new ideas need new names, and because they're not new. So I'm having in my hand a little book. It's way too small for you to see. It's called Small is Beautiful, E.F. Schumacher. And this was released in 1975 when I was 19 years old. It's got none other than Mahatma Gandhi on it. And it is all about relocalization. It's about going back to the village. Mahatma Gandhi used the spinning wheel as a symbol of that. And if I open to one page, lo and behold, two eminent ecologists from the day, Tom Dale and Gil Carter, in 1955 were saying exactly the same thing. That was 1 year before I was here. So I guess I'm trying to make the point that I'm not talking about anything new. And that, what I am talking about is a level of local governance. I'm addressing my submission in reverse order now. I'm doing number 2 first. The relocalisation of local governance to a level below community board, a more grassroots level. And that would involve existing organisations, many settlements, if you will, settlement and area county, if you will, and some of the mechanisms of this are already in place, in my opinion. One of them being town hall committees, and another one being marae committees. And if we can get these together and business associations together in a form of governance, I believe that this will be a good thing for our future, and I'd like to see it incorporated in long-term planning, because in 2008 we wrote it into our vision, and in 2018 we reiterated it with the simple words, work towards subsidiarity, which is that decisions are made at the lowest possible level, closest to the people who they affect. So it's all about the connections within the governance system that we already have. And I've come up with 9 reasons why we should do this. And they are local services and procurement, which is popular among some of you already, i.e. local contractors or local organisations look after, for the public toilets, the refuse collection, the mowing, parks and reserves, and possibly the mowing of roads, minor repairs to the roads, etc., etc. They also manage core local infrastructure, some of which might be income generating. There isn't any reason ultimately why a town hall couldn't generate some income, some actual income. If it was used a lot, and if they were also in charge of, for instance, a community hub. Somebody, a distinguished speaker talked about some of the community hub activities that libraries are doing, linking people up with social services and so forth. One of the problem Kaikohe has had, a very small population, is concerning this, is we have a meeting and 35 people come to the initial meeting called by Ken Ross about revising the vision. And then the next week as we start work on it, and 5 people come. And 5 people come every Tuesday night for 18 months and give hundreds and thousands of voluntary hours to do this. And then it doesn't get followed up because we disband after that. And so really, I'm asking council who've requested that we do this, to provide us with, and it would involve funding. Incidentally, I haven't priced any of this. I do not know how we would pay for this. But to provide us with a mechanism by which we might follow this up on a regular basis. And I call it grassroots governance, or governance of the people, by the people, for the people. Which would be sending messages up to you all the time and prompting community board first and then council. The role of the community board in this would be just as it is with town hall committees at the moment, which is to provide the advisory member or possibly the facilitator of the meetings. And that comes to, number 4 facilitates CLD, it's being called now, community-led development and community-led consultation. Kaikohe is also a leader in this. We did this in 2007. and we did it very well. In our community-led consultation on the road rehabilitation project, council patrons with. Emergency management. We all know, I think, that we're going to be doing emergency management after the various emergencies. May 14th being one of them that didn't require an emergency management centre. But the more local that is, the more people you have, actual people you know. In Kaikohe, it's neighbours. It's all about our neighbours. If somebody comes to you on the ambulance, it's your neighbour. And so there would be people right there who would be the emergency management hub at that town and area level. And there might be 3 of them in North Hokianga, based in Pangaru, Kaikohe, and Manganui, Broadwood, or something like that. Facilitation's the next one, number 6. So something glaringly needed in our communities is facilitation, mediation, non-violent conflict resolution. There's plenty of examples in Kaikohe of this, and so this, people could be trained as I believe you are. You have workshops about governance to actually provide this at local level, or bring in appropriate people to do it. And I might add that if there's if for instance, like councillors act in this role for community board, the community board member would act in this role for the local, the very local grassroots town and area settlement area governance body. Who does it here at council level? What I'm seeing is that Kahika Moko is expected to facilitate the whole meeting and be the mayor at the same time, voice his mayoral opinion as well. Now, I'm not saying you're not capable of that, Mr. Mayor, by any means, Your Worship, but it is a thought. At Parliament, we have a speaker, and I'm just putting that in. The local governments could keep an eye on other long-term plan and strategy documents as to how they relate to their community. And the one I'm thinking of, because I'm deeply, deeply involved in it, is there will be, in the not too distant future, a long-term plan for arts, culture and heritage.
1 minute remaining.
Okay, animal welfare is the next one, and possibly even pest control. So there may be a local business that council seeds funds, and that will be a dog breeder, a licensed dog breeder, because we shouldn't be supporting puppy farms. And I added arts, culture and heritage as well, because a lot of our settlements, like Kaikohe, are heritage precincts. I think that the other part of my submission, which is about local industry, I think is relatively self-explanatory, and also I've been here several times talking about it. And I've used a thing called fast ops gasification of all of our waste, not just some of it, all of it, to make what I call biodiesel or diesel fuel. So, but there are lots of others. Industrial hemp, and if we're replacing every exotic plant we take out, 50 native plants, and you've got a native nursery business. They're just, it all offshoots off each other. I think I have kind of covered it. May I say one more thing? Just one more thing briefly. An incredibly synchronous thing happened yesterday, and that is that the summary of submissions to SOSMP, Safer Online Services and Media Platforms, arrived in my inbox. And there were 20,281 submissions. Some of you will have an interest in this. And lo and behold, 18,879 of them were from 2 groups: Voices for Freedom and the other one, the Free Speech Union. and they were universally anti. I found myself among the 4.2% of individual submitters who were actually for some more regulation of online services and media platforms. And I have fairly deep personal experience about that from where I live. So that's me. Thank you very much for hearing my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much for travelling quite through today for your submission. We always appreciate seeing you here in Chambers, and we'll be taking your submission into consideration. Now turn to page 36. Next submission comes from Northland Experiences and Mike Sims here. Mike Sim. Mike, great to have you here. Happy to pass the time over to you.
Thank you. So, Mike Sim, for those of you I haven't met, I'm here presenting Top Trail and Northland Experiences, one of the two commercial operators on the Twin Coast Cycle Trail. And my topic, as you've seen from my submission, really is that the cycle trail from Kaikohe to Opua has been a topic of much controversy and conversation. And in your 3-year long-term plan, there's $4 million allocated to continuing to work on that during that 3-year special period that you've been granted by the government. My submission basically is that all, if not most of it, not all of it, should be redirected to those purposes that have been a reason for the 3-year plan, because the current situation with the trail, the status quo is working very well. It doesn't require that $4 million to be spent in this next 3-year period. So before I talk about the problem, maybe a little bit of background about the trail, which you may or may not know, but the cycle trail was set up by previous government in 2009. It is one of 23 around the country and the only one in Northland. It was set up specifically to improve the physical and mental well-being of communities and to provide economic benefits from cycle tourism to trail towns and others. My colleagues in Central Otago call these people wallets on bikes. We haven't been very good in far north in attracting them, making sure that we can get them to open their wallets. However, the controversies that's been taking place has been around how the cycle trail will continue to share the strip of land between Kaikohe or Taumarere and Opua. And all sorts of different trails and all that, but in all of them, the voice of the commercial operators on the trail has not been heard very well. In fact, the first formal conversation that we had was organised in this room by Kelly about 2 months ago, when we had a chance to talk about what our views might be for the trail from Taumarere to Opua and how we could coexist with the vintage rail. So, as I was surprised, the project manager who came to that meeting, who was about to submit a resource consent for a $20 million special route for the cycle trail, and he was somewhat taken aback by the conversation that took place, and the realisation that the commercial operators hadn't been involved in these discussions, and in fact were quite lukewarm about some of the proposals that were put forward. So I'm pleased to say that prior to all that, there have been some discussions with the Vintage Rail Trust. We've come to a solution which seems to work at the moment. That's the basis of my submission, really, that status quo is working. There's no need for the $4 million to be prioritised over other pothole filling and other bits and pieces of infrastructure that need to be done in the short term. What we're doing at the moment is we're using the train to carry cyclists from Taumarere to Akiaki, and then the cycle trail has been re-established at Akiaki so they can get off the train and back on the cycle trail and ride into Opua. So the Twin Coast Cycle Trail is now true to its name, and people can now ride from Hauraki to Opua, albeit with a period on the train. It's an attraction. So the feedback we've been having for this new arrangement has been very, very positive. People now say that we've got tunnel, boardwalk, switchback, train ride, sometimes a steam train, and going through trail towns. We've had a few hiccups and all that, not always a steam train, and trains often cancelled. But the key thing is that status quo is working, given the constraints that we might have otherwise for the replacement, which is a nice to have, in our opinion, and the commercial operator's opinion. I'm talking to the other opposition. The status quo is fine at the moment. Thank you very much. And if you could use the money in a better way for fixing some of these issues that were caused by adverse weather events and have been the basis of giving you a 3-year special planning spectrum, then that could be done. But the key ask I have of you is to make sure that to make this happen, we've got to be talking, and you have to be talking as well, to the Vintage Rail to make sure that we don't have to face up to them creeping through to Opua as funding becomes available. Because as soon as they creep past 50 metres past the Akiaki station, we don't have a cycle trail. It becomes a construction zone, and the cyclists can't get off the train and get back into the cycle trail because there's going to be an interim area there. We've got to wait until they've got funding to complete the whole trail, if that's what they want to continue to do. And part of the reason for not having fixed funding at the moment is there's significant uncertainty around fixing the tunnel area, as you're probably aware. So I guess my request is no incremental railway line construction until the whole thing is fully funded. If there is some funding that comes through to the Vintage Rail Trust, that they be directed to spend it on the tunnel reconstruction in the meantime, so it doesn't disrupt the cycle trail. There are a number of people that want this additional cycle trail to be built, and I'm saying that that discussion should be held in 2027 when you start the next 10-year planning period. It doesn't have to be in this planning period, where, as a resident of the far north, I would prefer to see the money spent on essential infrastructure rather than disrupting what is a very workable situation and much commented upon situation at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Minister Shepherd.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, does your business book the train for your passengers?
For our tour, it does. For our day hire people, we advise them that they must book it, which they do in 95% of the situations.
Are you aware of any cyclists having an issue booking the train due to congestion?
Not due to congestion, only they wonder why they have to book on a train, which is almost a commuter situation, and in 99% of the time there aren't any capacity constraints, and if there are, for 2 of the trains, there's another train coming in and 2 hours later. And it goes back to my other point that getting wallets on bikes to get their wallets out, part of that deal is to get them to stay in Kawakawa for 2 hours and spend some money shopping until the next train comes along. So if it's overcrowded, it's probably quite a good thing from an economic point of view.
How do you propose the council stop the Bay of Islands Vintage Railway Trust when the lease is with their leases with Kiwi Rail?
Their leases with Kiwi Rail. But don't you have to provide permission for construction activity on it?
Under the Building Act or Resource Management Act, a council wouldn't have the authority, just hold up works.
And Kitariki board, you've got a position on Kitariki board?
No, that's all separate. Council doesn't have anything to do with the Vintage Railway Trust.
Well, I guess I leave that to you. There's a $4 million prize in all this. If you can get the Vintage Rail to see that unless they can fund the whole exercise right to Opua, there's a danger there could be a 10-year, 5-year, whatever, a long period of construction zone there, during which cycle trail couldn't exist for that last section.
Just final question, Mike, respectfully, you don't speak on behalf of all the commercial operators today, do you?
Those that run cyclists,
Yes.
I think I do. Who's missing?
So there's a,
Yeah, Shane, I've been talking to you yesterday about it. I thought he was coming to submit today, but he's not here.
I think he takes a different position on this to you.
Okay.
Councillor Court.
Thank you. Were you here this morning when Ms. Dalton made her submission? The question was put by my colleague over the other side of the table there. Was there a risk that we could lose our great ride status if this did not go through? Can you offer an opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it's a better great ride now because of the train ride than it was before. But you know, it's a small portion of the ride. I think we'd have good argument to say that you know, there's a temporary solution. We are committed longer term to completing this ride to Opua, and this process in between is the government has given us 3-year stay of execution to prioritise spending on infrastructure rather than on this. I personally don't see it as a real threat, and I think if the council were to ask the commercial operators, they would. Well, he's got a different view, but I account for 70% of the cyclists at the moment. So, and I know that's not accounting for everyone. And Shane told me yesterday something different. So, his words to me were, "Leave the status quo as it is." That's his position. Might be different in terms of the solution and how to fix it further down the track, but in the short term, he's very happy with. Well, convinced me he's very happy with the current situation.
Thank you. Final question from Councillor Kapa.
Kia ora. Just one question. So you're just focusing on the cyclists on the trail, not necessarily the walkers?
Yes.
Okay. And just a supplementary, so what are you saying is that the cyclists will dive into their pockets more than the walker, is your view?
I don't know. I just talked to my colleagues in Queenstown. They call them wallets on bikes. We
right.
Yeah. We don't hear that because I don't think the wallets get open enough.
Yeah. I suppose just as an addition, I've walked the Camino walk in Santiago in Spain, and I found that the majority, in fact, 90% of the walkers actually fund that walk. And the cyclists are there, absolutely. And their intention is to try and travel as far as they can in one day, as opposed to stop over as walkers will do and spend money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Mike, for your verbal submission to council today. Great day. Our next submitter is online. We've got Tracy Schubert, who do you want to unmute there, Tracy, and see if we can hear you? Just get you to try and mute again, please.
Mute. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Happy to pass the time over to you. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Tracy Schubert aho. I would like to start firstly by saying a huge thank you to the council for voting on Northland Watch's motion, thankfully put forward by Hilda. Thank you very much for implementing and requesting a stay of execution on introducing fluoridation into the far north. We very much appreciate that, and look forward to when we can actually all meet in person to discuss the next strategy. So I'm not going to go on about the fluoridation issue because I've addressed that. I do want to say that this extends also to poisoning of our forests, and we are against 1080. I would like to get a breakdown of the proposed rates rise increase, and I've been listening most of the morning, and I don't envy your decisions on how you prioritise the issues that the council's facing. And I know that you're proposing to increase the rates, but I don't know how it's allocated, how you make the decisions as to which areas get the money and which don't. So that's, I don't know how it's justified. I don't know where that breakdown is. I don't know how to find it. So that's the first thing I would like to know is if you're increasing the rates, we need to know where the expenditure is going on. And obviously roading is a significant one, as I RFI the previous speakers, Clark's buses about the roading, also the highway, the water tables not being maintained. I worked for 20 years in roading and I know a lot about it. And if you do not maintain the water tables and the cambers, then you're going to get the flooding and the erosion. In my submission, there is a point about spending money on the roads, and what I would like to say is my car has been wrecked. I've spent $3,000 on repairs last year to get a warrant due to suspension issues, wheel bearings, shock absorbers, sway bars, tyres, wheel alignments, because the roads are full of potholes. The surface is cheap and nasty. If you're going to resurface, I think you're wasting money by doing a once over lightly with bitumen and then stone chips, which then crack people's windscreens. And I know a friend who's had 5 windscreens, and when he first was here, it was $400 a windscreen, and now it's $1,200 to replace a windscreen. So if you're going to do the repairs, I'm suggesting that you do a stitch in time saves 9. You do a proper resurfacing sealing, not a once over lightly, where you go back 2 months later and the surface is all chipped and cracked and breaking up. State Highway 10 is a disgrace, and so is 12. And these roads are being used by trucks, which are heavy duty forestry trucks contributing it. So I think the forestry industry needs to be contributing to the roading, and that's one way that you could be looking for some funding to address your state highways. I have a question about one of my submission was about development. Residential housing going into prime horticultural growing land around particularly Kerikeri. I can't believe the council has approved some of the huge residential subdivisions going along Kerikeri Road. We're losing our fruit growing district, which is what brings in the income to Kerikeri, because it's now getting covered in houses. So I think you need to prioritise where these subdivisions are going and not putting them into the best horticultural growing agricultural volcanic soil. The other thing around that is developers. Are developers funding the cost of the roading, the sewerage, the water, the utilities, the lighting, the wastewater? Developers paying for these costs, or are ratepayers paying for this? Because I understand with Blue Penguin Drive that that subdivision, the services weren't borne by the developer. So that's a question I have for the council. Who's in these subdivisions? Who's paying for what? I'll move on to my next point, recycling. I think you're losing a major opportunity here as a council to make money through a proper recycling centre, such as what Nelson City Council have and Auckland City Council, where it's not just throwing out your plastic bottles and your your water bottles and your rubbish. It's actually a repurposed recycling centre that sells what people are dumping and getting rid of. You use back, and people will go and buy that. It's like an op shop. You can go and buy, you can get parts, you know, it recycles everything. And so a purpose-built recycling centre would actually start to make money for the council. And I just see an opportunity here that's going to waste. For further information, you should get in touch with the Nelson City Council. I lived in Nelson for 4 years, and there was a standing joke about going shopping to Mitre 11. Mitre 11 was the recycle centre. In your long-term plan, I think there's 2 facilities that Kaikohe and the surrounding area are desperately going to need, and one is a hospital. I know this has been on the cards for some time, but if you're talking a long-term plan, I think you need to be budgeting and strategically lobbying the Ministry of Health around getting a hospital, because your population here is primarily elderly, and you're promoting Kaikohe to be a retirement centre for the whole of New Zealand, and you're allowing developers and retirement villages to go up left, right and centre with no provision for a hospital. I see, where I live, I see the rescue helicopter flying out every day from here down to Whangarei. I see ambulances coming from Kawakawa Hospital to here. There's no hospital, and you've got an aging population, and it's going to become critical, I think, in the future. The other service I think is needed is an indoor heated public swimming pool. I don't understand why you've granted a sports stadium to be built at Waipapa and not included a public swimming pool at the time that this is being built. Now's your chance to get that swimming pool in on the ground floor of development. There's no swimming pool allocated for that sports stadium. The only public swimming pool that's heated all year is Little Dippers, and I understand that they are closing. And the other public swimming pool is at Kaikohe High School, and that's only open during the summer. Next point is supply of rubbish bins. This is not going to cost the council a lot around the reserves. I live on the Waipapa Inlet Reserve, and I'm fed up with going down and picking up rubbish from cars that go down there and park up and drink and drop their rubbish, because there is no rubbish. There's one rubbish bin which is overflowing. And the same with other reserves. If you want people to be tidy, please supply rubbish bins, and then people will put it there. Otherwise, they're just dumping the rubbish. And my last point is and I did hear this mentioned by one of your previous speakers, about a bypass road behind Kaikohe Town Centre, starting off where the paper road is, I understand, in Butler Road, by the Woolworths. You need to be thinking about this one-way system that is now congested. In the time I've lived here, the population has doubled, and so is the cars, and it's becoming, I left Auckland for some reasons. One of them was the traffic, and now I'm seeing major congestion getting in and out of Kaikohe, and that one-way system round and round and round doesn't head in. There was a major bypass put in about 10 years ago to take the roading off from the Stone Store. And my understanding is that the paper road links up into that bypass, and the provision is there. So in your long-term planning, looking at further increase in residents moving into the area, that means more cars, more traffic, more congestion, and you need to be allocating money to get that done. This needs to be planned now, because it's going to be vital, I think, within 5 years. Anyway, that's my submission. It's a smorgasbord today, and I know that you guys are running behind time, so I will finish off here, and thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Tracy. That's very succinct verbal submission. We have time if there are any questions from the floor. No, thank you very much, Tracy. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, and all the best with your decision making on your prioritising.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Next up needs no introduction. Our former Deputy Tanya McInnes, great to have you online today, particularly you can hear us, and if you want to just test your mic there as well.
Kia ora koutou.
Awesome, coming in loud and clear. We did a fast time.
Kia ora, lovely people. Thank you so much for your time today, and I just want to acknowledge the submitters before me. It's bringing back lots of memories, and I know that submitters put an immense amount of time and energy into bringing their concerns and solutions before you. I just want you to take a big breath because I want to take us up into quite big strategy visionary space. The paper that you have before you has been submitted to all 4 councils in the Tai Tokerau region, and the reason for that is that I'm hoping that Northland can lead the way in how we look at local government reform. We know the reform is coming and we know that it's well needed. I think probably one of the challenges is that it's needed in a way that has refreshed thinking and just doesn't repeat how we've done things in the past. I'm going to start off by just reading a couple of excerpts from the local government review of Future of Local Government, which I think just sort of set the scene a little bit. Now I'll take a breath. Right. The series of compounding crises we are experiencing are unlikely to abate. Climate change, the ongoing fallout from COVID-19, disruptive technological advances, and the economic and geopolitical impacts of global conflict. Extreme weather events, persistent inequality, and low social cohesion are already affecting communities here. All of these challenges are felt at place and will only intensify over the next 30 years. These events weigh heavily on the political environment and reinforce the need for strong leadership, authentic relationships, and new ways of thinking, behaving, and operating at all levels of government. The current local government system is not set up for future success. The report also states local government must play a critical role in building place-based resilience that supports communities through the times ahead. This will not be possible under the current system of local government. So quite big and challenging words. I just want to endorse, I guess, a phrase that we're hearing quite a lot of now, and that is locally led, and I underline the word led, regionally enabled and nationally supported. And I strongly advocate for that approach. And it raises an opportunity and a question of what genuine localism looks like. And I just want to tautoko Wally Hicks. I don't know if he's still in the room, but his, what did he use it? Relocalism, which I quite liked. And as he fairly points out, this is not new thinking. It's been around for a really long time. I now just want to read a short extract from a recently released report that's come out of the UK. It's called New Local, which is a UK think tank. And it's quite powerful. There is a wealth of evidence that community-powered approaches can improve well-being, support cohesion, enable prevention, and generate savings. This reflects the fact that communities, both as local neighbourhoods and as groups of people with shared experience or conditions, have essential insights into how public services could work differently to improve lives. This expertise can bring new perspectives and deepen the impact of service interventions. The value of more relational, strengths-based approaches which can work with people in the context of their wider networks and assets is increasingly recognised as the essential for public services to fulfil their core purpose to improve lives. And I think that sort of, I guess, gives strength to this call at the moment of what subsidiarity looks like. One of my concerns with this is that they're all really good words, and what does it actually look like on the ground? And a lot of the move that we're seeing overseas is where the strength comes from is genuine community-led change and action to how we do things. And I think when we look at regional deals, which there's some really great opportunities in there, but also being incredibly mindful that they come with the power to make decisions locally and we're still not controlled by a central government approach. So I just want to bring this big picture stuff down into a little bit more practical approaches, and I will highlight an example. So the recommendations within the local government reform report, there's a number of recommendations, and I just want to focus on the system renewal. So there's 7 to 9 the recommendations. So numbers 7 to 9 under system renewal. Number 7 is initiate a reorganisation of local government to strengthen support and resource councils to plan for and respond to increasing challenges and opportunities, and to set local government up for a more complex future. And I won't read the other two, but the other two are basically around how the Crown comes in and supports this approach and ensures stewardship to strengthen the health and fitness of the system. But my question is, with number 7 is, you know, a reorganisation of local government, is what's the opportunity for Northland to lead what that might look like, and how does that fundamentally look and feel on the ground? And I think while it is complex, there's also some quite exciting opportunities within there. My submission obviously points out 3 opportunities, and I want to note that these varied opportunities across the district in which we could do a deal with central government to test case or trial or be the guinea pig, and approaches to how we do better by the people we serve. I'm really mindful that, once again, I just want to reiterate that regional deal, and I have put in my submission that it could be part of that, but I'm also wondering if it would be kept separate too, just so you're ensuring that if we're going to be a test case for refreshed or renewed or innovative thinking, that it doesn't get caught up in how we currently do things. Yeah, and just once again reiterating that need for locally led, that central government needs to relinquish a certain amount of control and trust that we know what we need best. There's lots of information that supports and reasons why we have got a one-size-fits-all approach to this country, and that needs to be reviewed, because as you guys well and clearly know, is that what we need here in Northland and far north is completely different to what Southland or Auckland needs. I think one of the examples I'm really quite excited about is the potential of how we use Māori whenua to look at review of legislation compliance or the building code. I understand that there is legislation being looked at that may look at how we work with Māori land different to than through the RMA. I think that's a work in motion, but it's looking at how do we look at, you know, making it easier, and that it is Māori-led, Māori doing what they wish to do on their land, but in a way that supports, and, you know, we can use it as a test case to how do we better the approach to building compliance, etc. The other thing I've raised, I'm not sure where I'm going for time, is I'm talking about Kai, and I think that I know this is easy, and I really support what Tracy just said, is we need to frickin' stop building on our arable land. I know and legislation has been introduced to support that, but this has got to stop. You know, we look at this country and there's lots of land, actually 10, 15, 20 years, we know droughts are going to become more and more common. We can really set ourselves up to produce food, supply Auckland, which will be a massive opportunity for us, but also fresh, real food. When you look at how food's going, that we could be eating cricket meal turned into, you know, looking like burgers, whatnot, through computerized food ackies, you know, to become a place in the world that you can get real and fresh is a massive opportunity. Yes, it's more mid to long-term thinking, but it needs to be thought about now. So the aim of putting a stake in the ground and saying that Northland will become a place of fresh natural food, and the opportunities that come with that are huge from an economic point of view. We've got aquaculture knocking at our door. The blue economy is massive. We can set up centres of excellence that I think Kaikohe is looking at aquaculture at the moment. Centres of excellence that don't just grow food, but we use it as educational opportunities, etc. And just my final point, the real importance of bringing our youth into this decision-making process, not from tokenism, but they are truly involved. We know that critical thinking in New Zealand's number 8 wire is reducing because numerous reasons. And how do we, Northland, we've got lots of challenges. How do we get our young people involved in being part of that solution? I'm just going to finish by saying I know you guys have, it's massive. The challenges for local government with infrastructure, etc., are really huge, and it can be hard when we're trying to deal with the day-to-day stuff to be thinking big picture. But my thinking is that, if we don't become part of the leadership in the way local government moves forward, it will be done to us. And so the opportunity to be smart in this space, to lead the way, to be the people, the kaitiaki of people in place is really important. So let's be part of this. I am also, there's opportunity that it could sit alongside local government rather than in it. So you guys can, focus on what needs to be done, why there's thinking sitting alongside in a mutual arrangement. So on that note, I think I'll draw that to a close. I just want to finish with what Albert Einstein said, which you'll all know this quote, and that is, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. And this is our opportunity to be innovative, think differently, and be smart. Kia ora. Thank you.
Kia ora. Thank you, Tanya. And if you can't see, Mato Wally Hicks is doing a big heart with his hands for you.
Bless them.
Thank you, Tanya. It's Kelly here. Our LTP is a 3-year focus on roading due to severe weather events. What's one strategic goal, that you've kind of covered that you'd see us focusing on?
Yep. I think it was actually brought up earlier, Kelly. I think there's an opportunity if you look at maybe the stormwater in a highway, or, what's a local issue that normally would have council come on board? How do you work with that local community for them to look at how they fix the problem? I think you said, John, with common sense. That's a really simple opportunity to work alongside them and look at how it can be done, and in a way that brings them involved. I remember when I was there, we were looking at flooding out at one of the marae, and the bigwigs came in and we forgot to ask the locals, who knew, of course, when it flooded, where the water went and all those things. So I think locally and really easily is, how do we get alongside our communities in a way that not only strengthens the relationship, because you're probably aware that confidence in local government leaders, not local government, confidence in political leaders is plummeting, not just in this country, but around the world. So how do we locally build trust, get people on board and make it simple and, fix some of these things in a straightforward, easy way?
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your submission, Tanya. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Take care, team. Thank you.
Our submission is from Alex Cox, and it can be found on page 43 of your packs here. Good day, Alex. Feel welcome to sit or to stand at I'm happy to pass your time over to you.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate this is a very difficult year. You're planning keeping rates within a reasonable rise. In order to do that, you'll rely on very much information coming from your staff. Unfortunately, that can lead to a limited viewpoint, but they're just trying to keep things simple of what we've done before, whether there are other reasons, but they just do not consider some of the options. I must ask councillors, is your role just to sit there and rubber stamp what you're presented with? Or should you be asking the hard questions? No. If you want to look at the consultation document, just consider the following. You asked about rates on 2 Earths consultations. Stormwater. I have a question for you. Why is it necessary to spend any money on urban stormwater? think back to the really underlying point, the only reason you need to spend money on urban stormwater is because it's been urban development, impervious surfaces. So why do you not rate essentially the impervious surface, which you're allowed to do? It's actually one of the criteria. It may be a bit costly to collect the information. So in my submission, I've given an alternative which you could use, which you have all the information. Water and wastewater sit there with their rates split between a capital and an operating element. The capital element is basically long-term assets funded by shorter-term debt. On one scheme, that's inequitable. You have people paying for the first quarter of the life of the reticulation, and the next 3 quarters of the people pay nothing. But you're a district, you have 17 schemes around the district. They all have their capital works occurring at different times. That's the strongest reason I know for saying you should be one district-wide rating. But it's not even mentioned in your discussion document. In terms of the specific rates for those two, you have an availability rate to capture some of the costs for future development. And those people who have still got green sections. But why have you not looked at alternatives? It's just a simple one availability rate rating unit. That's a simple one. But you again have options to say that where you've granted subdivision approval, building consents to increase the number of units, why are you not rating those for the full availability charge? To take one example, Arvida, 200 units, and they're taking about 7 years to put them in place. Think of all the money you're missing. One of my pet hates, you have a subsequent PAN charge. And again, the capital element of that, the costs you're incurring are driven by peak demand. So there is absolutely no justification for the discount that subsequent PANs get on the capital rate. There may be some argument for the operating rate. I think the most worrying figure is sitting in wastewater option 4, where we are shown the operating costs by scheme for the first time for years. Don't carry figure, which are probably your one compliant and up-to-date scheme, show a large difference between next year and the 2 future years. In rates terms, it amounts to $1.5 million net of GST. Why can you have that much expenditure in your newest scheme? And what does that suggest the problems in future as other schemes are upgraded and brought up to a standard? Looking into the future is where I'm saying you have some problems there. I also have some difficulties with the figures that are provided. You've given 3 years, but there's no increase in the actual number of units that are being rated in those 3 years. It's a simple calculation. Rate is given, just divide one by the other. That suggests somebody, staff, isn't doing their job. Sorry, I shouldn't look over that way, should I? But something in there. Also, in some of those years, the rate shield on the rate sheet differs from that in the financial information supporting documents. That, I presume, was some late change and it never caught up. But that asking ratepayers to make decisions on changing rates on the basis of 3 years information ongoing facilities. Sorry, I must challenge that. That's what I'm bringing to your attention, that your role should also be challenged. Thank you for your time. I've kept it short, I hope. Should I take any questions?
Councillor Foy.
Thank you, Alec, for your presentation. We don't, unfortunately, our council doesn't get a rating specialist to come and speak to us. And of all the things and all the people that come and speak to us, rates are the most important because essentially our job is to set the rate, and that's what we vote on. A lot of the points that you're raising, I think, are really relevant. I would question having, I would like to get together with you and speak about some of the numbers you've spoken to, but I would really actually like a workshop on rates where we actually look at these numbers and get down to the detail. I know that you previously worked as a staff member in rating for many years. So the question in particular isn't just about the OPEX and the capital rating. I really take your points quite clearly about the stormwater, and the current rate is actually proposed based on the permitted impermeable surface coverage for the different zonings under the district plan. So the depreciation that we collect for our assets throughout the district are a huge amount. And in the background data that we've been given from staff, we're not actually spending that money on renewals. Do we have to collect depreciation on our assets? And in terms of the rating and where that's taken from and actually collected over time, how is that shown in our asset registers?
Well, you know how information is shown in the registers. I have difficulty getting information at times, even with official information requests, some of which have taken 2 years to be answered. You know, there has been in the past, I hope in the past, tendency to avoid information getting out of asylum. That is not the way to be efficient. I hope the new staff you have around will make some changes in that direction. But I can only hope.
We'll go to Councillor McNally and then quickly Councillor Research.
Thanks, Mr. Cox. You'll be aware we have no development contributions policy at the moment. The question I have is how your final sentence, you suggested a charge on or provide an incentive for a developer to proceed as rapidly as practical. The question is, how would you allow for a change in real estate conditions? Bearing in mind we've had the 07-08 GFC and we're in the middle of another one right now, I think.
The developer applies for resource consent. At that time, he's intended to do it. Council is then committed to ensuring the infrastructure is there for him. When they grant that consent, they're basically saying you can connect 50 or 200 or whatever.
You understand what?
If he starts or change occurs and he decides not to go ahead, he can surrender that consent.
That doesn't help. Right? That doesn't actually help if you want to increase your capacity.
Well, it doesn't help. It gives him a way out if he's doing it. But if he's asking for, I can take one at the moment near me. A piece of land that I've cited an example has 58 houses intended on it, going oral. Not all to be there, some of them were intended to be sold, was the last story we heard. But the land is just sitting idle. Why should you not be receiving some money in for it? Even pooling and saying that availability charge is in a fund to be held for capital development. You're setting your policies, you're saying how you can use that money, and you're rating for it. You're basically saying availability charge will not be part of the normal, it will go there for future development, or single vacant units, you might say, well, they're paying for what's already in place for them. Any excess I'm just saying it's not, doesn't seem to have been even considered. We're taking what's
I
simple.
like the concept, and we need to expand the Kaikohe sewage plant right now. The reality is, if we have a market collapse, no one's coming. That's a Kaikohe right now.
And if the market collapses, no one comes. Council's committed to building a scheme of a certain size. There's nothing they can do about it either.
So, final question, councillor Vucic.
Yeah, thanks. You sort of partly answered one of my questions, Alec, but just picking up on something else. Information supplied with only 3 years forecast rate, not sufficient for an average ratepayer to make make an informed decision. So just commenting on that, in terms of what was given out there, is there enough detail? So you, in your opinion, you're saying that this average ratepayer or ratepayers, because we heard also mentioned by community board actually that they didn't understand what was being asked in some of these things. So I'm just wondering if you can comment on was there sufficient information given to make a sensible decision on what we're looking at here.
The problem I see is most ratepayers are going to look and say, what's it going to cost me? That's their key figure. But if you're asking them to change a rating system that's a long-term thing, to give them just 3 years information, especially when about part of the document says that in year 5 you're going to spend another 60 million on something. So you can't make these long-term decisions based on just the current or even the historic without looking ahead. That's the point. You can tell them what it will be. A lot of people change houses every 2 years. Well, yes, that's the sort of time frame they're working on, but I don't think most people in this area do. It's trying to balance up the amount of information so they'll read it for their understanding. It's always been a problem. How much do you give to supply? Making the other information available so that it can be picked up and balanced is an issue there. That's part of the problem as well. I know that the concept of a 30-year plan sounds horrifying.
Thank you very much for your submission to council today, Alec. I hope you have a great afternoon.
You do.
Our final verbal submitter today is Amanda Bennett, representing Northern Regional Trails Project. Now, we've just had that handed out as a printed form, but I know you did receive it electronically, and I just had a quick look at it. I remember actually reading it last night, so happy to have you in our council chambers, Amanda, and when you're comfortable and ready, feel free to get started.
Thank you. Got a few props here. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Okay. Firstly, kia ora koutou. Thank you, everybody, and hello. Ko Amanda Bennett tōko ingoa. My name is Amanda Bennett, and I'm representing the Northland Regional Trails Project today of 2024. Thank you for allowing me this time. So I know you've read the submission, so I'm not going to go over that, and I will leave it with you for deliberation. The 2024 regional project has been created, though, to revitalise the 2018 Northland Walking and Cycling Strategy, which was agreed to by all Northland councils in 2018. And today, I'm not recapping over what I've got in there, but I'm going to take you on a journey. This is going to break up a bit of what you've been thinking about this morning. I'm going to take you on a journey. So picture this if you can. So dad and teenage son get off at Putu to ride. Okay, here we go with the props. Okay. They're going to ride the missing link. Mum and teenage daughter stay on the boat and disembark at Dargaville on the boat. All aboard, rightio. To find their accommodation, they go to the supermarket to get their supplies. Taking their purse, and going back to what Mike said before, wallets on bikes and wallets on walkers. So here we go. So this is the story.
They get up the next morning and they ride to the Kaikohe Valley Trail to the Babylon Coast, Babylon Creek, and they head up to the Kaikohe Coast Mountain Bike Park for a few hours. Whoops, they're going to pay for that. Then they head over to the Kaikohe Lakes for a swim. They're back on their bikes. They head to the Ahakiwi Marae to sleep on the Wharanui and have hunt for dinner with many stories told about Te Aroha. In the morning, a Te Roroa van collects them for a treetop experience. They see Tāne Mahuta and they visit a tree plot that they've sponsored. More money coming out of the purse where they get to plant native trees and they come back and visit their family plot next time they come up to the north. After lunch, the Te Roroa van, more money, drops down the Southern Donnelly's Crossing where they start the grade 4 bike ride up over the old Waiuku Coach Road through Wainara Forest and then down to Horeki. Mum and daughter and the bikes get dropped off at Opunoni for the afternoon to get a swim and some lunch. Visit the Mania footprints of Kupe. They ride their bikes. Tarawani, catch the ferry. Here we go, all aboard. Across to Pohupohu. From there, they ride their bikes to meet Dad and son at Horeki. They have dinner and they stay the night at the Horeki Park. On the bikes again the next morning, they ride the Poharinga Tai Twin Coast Trail to Okaiho, to Kaikohe for further supplies, spending more money to the Napa Springs for a lovely soak, more money and more help. To Kawakawa for lunch, more money, train ride, here we go. And then, sorry, where am I? To a train ride to Okua, into Paihia where they stay the night, spending more money. Next day they ride the bike again to visit the Waitangi Treaty Grounds, catch the ferry, on board again. Afternoon over to Russell, spend more money into the Russell Top 10 Holiday Park. The next morning, they cycle along the Waimumu and Wangaruru harbours to Helena Bay where they grab some takeaways for dinner. They spend the night at a B&B. Then they get up the next morning, go through to Sandy Bay and Marapuri for an ice cream. They go to Tutukaka and Nangaru and then into Whangare. They need more supplies by now and they go shopping. Yeah, get the purse out before heading to the accommodation. More money. Early next morning, they catch the ferry. Here we go again. Over to Marsden Cove, disembarking the ferry, they ride on their bikes down the shared path from Bream Bay to Ruakaka, then the trail to Waipu Town, Waipu Cove, stopping for a swim, having a drink, more money, and heading over the hills to enjoy the mountain bike parks at Waipu and Green Derwents. They're getting there, folks. You're still on the journey with me? Righty-ho, here we go. Then they're heading into Mangawhai campground for the night, spending more money. Next day, it's on the bikes. Up Gibbons Road, under the underpass, we're dreaming a bit here, but just stay with me on the journey. Under the underpass over State Highway 1, on the Mountain Road, into the heart and drive through Monotoroto, get a coffee and cake, Pepperoa to the mountain bike trails, onto the Matakohi Museum, more money, then back onto the Heartland Ride to stay on a sheep farm in Arenga for the night, time to shear a sheep and stay in a shearer's hut. More money. In the morning, it's on the bike again to climb Toka and take in the views. Up in Kaikohe Harbour, and then back into Dartmouth to stay the night. More money. It's the last night of the holidays, so Dad says I'm going to shout dinner. Here we go, more money. The next day they get on the ferry. 11 o'clock, they ride back to Helensville. I'm going to take the helmet off now. They climb back into their car, which has not been used for 11 days. Weary, with memories of amazing experiences about the culture and heritage of Northland Taitokau. The great outdoors, helping to save the environment, supporting the businesses and communities of our region, spending quality time and healthy time as a family, meeting new people and making new friends. They are already planning the next trip to see their trees in their little plot and for all the experiences that they did not get the chance to take. And you and I know there's many, many of those. Guess what? This story is closer to reality than you think. It just needs good planning and collaboration, and this is what the 2024 project is all about. Guess what else? Mum and Dad are now thinking seriously about moving from the hustle of Auckland to the north. She's a project manager, he's a secondary school teacher. They whakapapa back to iwi in the north. They want to give back to their community. They have always wanted to build their own home and grow a garden and live a rural life. Consider this. They may not have even considered this if not for the walking and cycling trails. The more people like this family who visit, love and live in the north equals more people to disperse costs of existing challenges like roads and rates. We've heard lots about that this morning. The outcome of this 2024 project that I'm project lead for walking and cycling in the Northland will mean the achievement of the Far North District vision and mission of He Whenua Rangatira, a district of sustainable prosperity and well-being, creating great places and supporting great people. The Northern Regional Trails LTP submission is asking Far North District Council to support us by co-funding the project lead role for the next 3 years and continue to support the implementation of trails across your district in our great region, supporting this legacy project to continue, investing in our future. Kia ora. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you very much. Love the props there. By the way, we'll go Councillor Research, Chair Board, then Councillor McNally.
Thank you. Look, thanks. I really enjoyed the show there, and I really enjoyed the opening too when we came down there, Babe and I, and did the ride when we supported that. We said we are keen for the connection, and I like your vision as well. In fact, I spoke with a guy called Graham Darrick who was looking at a scale, but he probably wouldn't be doing it from Helensville to Kaikohe. But the question I got, and what is really important to me, is we are currently funding, for example, the Great Ride Cycle Trail, significant dollars. What's really important, and that's what has been said to us really recently when we're looking at our priorities for Northland, is that there's a joined up approach. Wellington has said you've got to have a joined up approach. So firstly, who is the Northern Regional Trails exactly, and how can we be ensured that we get a joined up approach so that there's a consistent voice and priority coming through to Wellington, presumably, where Great Rides funding is. And that's my two questions.
Okay, great, thank you, John. Okay, so who was the team? So interestingly enough, the project team has been created by 5 passionate individuals who live in Northland. So it goes back to the community-led project. It's basically a community-led project, and the reason it started like this was when the 2018 strategy was created, Northern Regional Council took the mandate to actually make that happen. Unfortunately, what's happened over the last 6 years is very little. And that goes back to lack of staffing and lack of capacity to do anything with it. Right? So 5 of us individuals, and it included, because I actually was on the Kaikohe Valley Trail project team, so I helped to create that. And we had discussions around how on earth could we get that 2018 strategy up and running. So we approached Northland Inc. They didn't have the capacity to do it. NRC didn't have the capacity to do it. So we decided we'd do it ourselves. So basically we talked to the Matakana Coast Trails Trust, who've actually got a project running down there where Auckland Council funded 50% of their role and the Outdoor Access Commission funded the other 50%. So we approached the Outdoor Access Commission and said, look, if we can get the strategy up and running, would you help us? And they said yes. So then we approached Whangarei District Council, who have got quite a big stake in one of the priority trails that we'd be looking at, and asked them if they would help fund it for the first 6 months with the idea that we could get all the other councils on board. Would they do it? And they said yes. And the other funder is Bike Northland. So I suppose now the second part to your question, John, was so at the moment we're a project. And what we would like to do is become a trust with all the councils and stakeholders, so to ensure that we've actually got some longevity with regards to some of the priorities that we're looking at doing. Yep.
Chair Ward.
Thank you, Member. Thank you, Amanda, for that presentation, and I'd like to thank you for your road trip recently. I attended your workshop a few weeks ago in Napa. I won't apologise for the predominantly Eastern Ward members from my board that attended, hoping that this would start in their backyard. I guess my concern with this is how do we convince the Far North District ratepayer to look at the visionary overall regional proposal where they don't see Mangawhai and Kaipara as linkages to our trail and how they feel that, you know, there's opportunities in their backyard to actually expand their trail. I guess it's the expectations of people coming along expecting the linkages to be in their hood. And I think, you know, the big challenge I put out to you is how do we convince those people that we have to start closer to Auckland where the people come from and that will connect to Horiki across and eventually right around the whole region.
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So the three things that the project's concentrating on, the very first one is community, right? So what we do see the huge amount of impact the community can make with these trails. So it's actually working with the communities to gather their own momentum. And I suppose put it back on their shoulders and say, well, what can you do to create these trails in your area? How can we then support you to do that? How can we then get council to support you to do that? So the three really key things are working with community and their community-led projects and bringing them into the fold and getting them to sort of realise that there is a big vision here that we all need to be part of. So working with them and linking in council. So sort of almost sort of taking away, I suppose, well, not taking away, but working with council, saying, council, how can we work with these communities? How can these communities work with you and be the link between the two? And then the third one is working with like central government. So how can we get funding from the New Zealand Cycle Trust? How can we get funding from MV, or is it a tourism infrastructure fund? So the project is very much around those three things. And I think from a community level, it's really important that we, which is why we had the community hui, and we will be going up to Kaikohe to have one in the next month. Just trying to get people to come on board at their level, because I know what you're saying, it's trying to get them to think bigger picture. And it's bigger picture where we're going to make more development. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your submission today, Amanda. Now we have run out of time, but Councillor McNally and Deputy Mayor Stratford, nothing is going to stop you from going over and having a chat because that was our last submitter for today. I will close us off formally with